Morning. My name is Maya. I'm a student physical therapy assistant, and
My name is CJ. I'm a student physical therapist assistant as well.
we would first off like thank you for participating in our community project.
Yes.
We know you guys have
Amazing.
culinary stuff to do, but thank you. So we are going to be talking about amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. Next slide, please. Does anybody have any idea what ALS is?
Show of hands.
Show of hands. Okay, 2 out of 4. All right.
Does anybody know of a family member or a friend that has ALS? Show of hands. Nobody.
Nobody.
Okay.
Okay. So quick trivia. Do you think ALS is curable or non-curable? Raise your hand for curable.
I heard curable. Okay.
Okay. Non-curable? Non-curable. Alright, so class split in half. What's the next one, please? Alright, so here we're going to tell you what ALS is. It stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's a disorder that is recognized as adult onset. It's a motor neuron disease, but it's also a complex disease process underlying a multi-system illness. Adult onset means they usually get it in their late 50s or older. And it's the most physically degenerative of the neurodegenerative diseases. It affects the brain and spinal cord, and it causes stiffness in the muscles, muscle twitching, weakness, which could result in difficulty swallowing and eventually breathing. Okay?
90% of ALS cases occur sporadically and usually become noticeable. Sporadically, I'm so sorry, guys. Sporadically, and usually become noticeable at age 50 or later. Occurs predominantly in the men, although one type of ALS is mostly found in women. Increased incidence found in white males. And this is a little diagram of how it affects the, starts with the neurons and then goes to the muscles and travels.
So the picture is showing you, it starts in the motor neurons in the brain. It sends signals to the motor neurons along the spinal cord, and then the motor neurons weaken and die, disrupting the signals between the brains and the muscles. So essentially, ALS patient will have a lot of limitation in movement as the disease progresses. And this just shows you the chain starts from the top to the bottom and the dead nerve cells.
Effects of the ALS, it starts with cognitive impairments. Are noted in 50% of ALS patients, but these deficits can be noted early on with careful assessment. Executive function deficits can be found in the visual attention, working memory, cognitive flexibility, problem solving, and visual perceptual skills. So basically the vision.
So the motor control effects of ALS, this picture shows how this patient has weakness of his cervical extensors, so his head is like drooping a lot. He has no real control of holding his head upright. So with lower motor neuron cell death and early denervation, the first evidence of disease is typically insidious, fast, and it develops asymmetric weakness, usually of the distal aspect of one limb, progressing to the weakness of the other muscles. So this picture, as I said, it's explaining how the extensor muscles become weaker. So at the top, this man has a strap around his head and around his chest to help him correct his bad posture, which is caused by the muscles getting weaker and weaker. So this just helps him keep his head up so he could possibly, keep his head up so he won't be so sore and that won't be a permanent posture. Okay, and then also in the hands, which we'll show later, those are muscles that become weak faster as well. Next slide. Sorry.
In the lower motor or flaccid component, facial muscles are affected. See right there. Weakness around the mouth develops. The movement of the tongue is decreased and the atrophy is present. Facilitations is the tongue are present with lower motor neuron dysfunctions. Manipulating food inside the mouth becomes difficult. Eventually, weak swallowing may trigger reflex coughing. So what you see right here, this lady right here, she is weak in the muscles, weak in facial drooping, she's decreasing at this moment right now. So she is struggling with eating by herself, swallowing by herself. So obviously she's in the tube, so she can go ahead and hopefully progress and hope to get better from that, but it's a small chance. Next slide, please. These are some examples of famous people throughout time that developed ALS. Football players, scientists, baseball players.
So there's really, I put this picture in here to show you that there's really no matter how active you are, how healthy you are, really ALS comes on. I mean, you can see the football player from his NFL days to now, he's in a wheelchair, having trouble breathing, basically dependent on a caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
And this is,
Can you go back, please?
This is a scientist. There's a lot of research on him. I think his name is Steve Hawkins. There's stories about how he survived ALS and was also a scientist at the same time.
Phenomenal scientist.
Okay. How do PTs and PTAs treat ALS? So do you guys have any idea what a PT or PTA could possibly do to treat a disease that's really not curable and it's progressive? No? Okay, so ALS patients, as anybody who is impaired, still want to feel like they're important in society. So PTAs and physical therapists focus on maintaining quality of life, doing modifications. For example, if an ALS patient still wants to be able to go to work, still wants to drive, they help in certain areas where they're weak to get them to those activities that they still want to be able to do.
It's just basically trying to get them back into society in a more comfortable state, knowing that their depression of the I'm so sorry, not the depression, but the degrading of the muscles, there's no really coming back, but just having that mental note of still able to do stuff is always a positivity. It's always a possibility, but it's rare.
So they help patients, like I said, create modifications so they still feel independent as long as possible. Independency, in patients like this, helps them mentally, physically, cognitively. For example, you guys are going to school to be chefs. The PTs, PTAs can work on modifications for an ALS patient to still be able to cook for as long as it's possible. And that helps a patient with their quality of life, essentially.
All right, so how does these pertain to your career? For those with ALS, proper nutrition is critical in sustaining weight to prolong and maintain quality of life. The goal in maintaining adequate nutrition is to consume enough calories to meet an individual's daily energy needs. For those diagnosed with ALS, choosing the right foods with the appropriate consistencies while employing tips for safer swallowing can help to maintain nutrition and mealtime enjoyment.
So, for example, if you happen to be a caregiver of an ALS patient, you would be able to use your chef skills to help them maintain nutrition, but you also have to be aware that their swallowing skills, the muscles in their mouth are very weak, so you have to cook things that are, that they're able to chew and swallow so they won't choke, because they're hard at breathing as well.
So community resources, we found 2 places. One is called the ALS Association. It's located in Tampa, the USF Morsani Health Center. They're open every 4th Saturday of the month, 2 to 4 p.m. for supports and stuff like that. And
this is also ALS Association, just in a different county.
Yeah, and this is Pinellas County right here. It's in St. Petersburg, and they meet every 4th Monday from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. And they're, both of the people are the same to contact. Haran Sisay, I believe that's how you say your name.
And you just look up the ALS Association in Google and call their phone number and see how you can get set up for your community resource to learn more about ALS patients. Right, go ahead. All right, so how many of you have heard about the Ice Bucket Challenge?
All right.
Basically everybody.
Okay, cool.
So do you know what the Ice Bucket Challenge was for besides ALS?
I just knew that was for awareness for ALS.
Okay, so it was used to promote awareness for ALS and encourage donations for research. There are plenty of people out researching how to prevent or stop the progression of ALS. So we have a video of the Ice Bucket Challenge. Go ahead and click. It'll be up shortly.
Since you nominated me to do the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, I am ready to accept, so let's go over there and do it.
We do it. Can I just say how thankful I am and how thankful my family is? You seriously have no idea. This is life-changing for the ALS community and our family. We're just so thankful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for nominating me.
Yes.
No, I know how cold I think it's going to be. But, all right, Kevin, Andy, come on out.
Okay, so that is the Ice Bucket Challenge. It's just supporting the ALS disease. And would you like to go ahead and close it for us?
Okay, so Ellen made generous donations to the research of ALS, and we hope that you got out of this just awareness about ALS. I do want to talk to you about things you could do. Maybe you won't get ALS and you'd be a caregiver, so you could use your profession, like I said before, for like being a chef for them to help them with their nutrition, because that is also important, as well as maintaining quality of life, because most of ALS patients end up in wheelchairs, and you don't want to add obesity onto the actual disease. So you could use your cooking as a caregiver to help.
As a benefit.
Yeah.
You can always just help out. You know, that's what we're all about, helping out. Progressing.
Anybody have any questions? Yes.
What age group was it again?
So the age group for ALS patients, it usually starts adult onset, which is, I read it's at age 50 or above, but there are people who accumulate the disease before age 50.
Thanks.
Any more questions?
And you said that people can choke on their food. I know there's a word for that, but what is it called? It's like
Dysphagia?
Dysphagia.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to know.
Dysphagia, yeah. So, weak swallowing muscles.
Yes.
So, any more questions? Good? Alright.
Thank you
so
for
much.
coming.
Thank you for your time.